The Edgework off-season plans continue here today with the Edmonton Oilers up next. Today we got Tyler Yaremchuk of the Oilers Nation as well as Daily Faceoff to help us build out the Oilers team going into next season. What do they do at the draft here? What do they do going into free agency? Are there any big trades that might be coming for this Oilers team? But Tyler, thanks for joining us here today. How's your summer going so far?
It's not bad. We just got 4 straight days of rain in Edmonton, which is insane. If you go probably about 4 hours west of the city, they got a dump of snow yesterday. But in Edmonton, no snow. So I'm happy about that.
Okay, nice. There you go. At least you got
Yeah.
that. We've got like sun out here in Toronto. It's nice every day, 30 degrees, golfing. So hopefully you can get through this, get through
Yeah.
the draft, get yourself out on the course coming up this summer. But before we get out on the course, obviously we got to do the heavy lifting. I'm gonna do it here for Ken Holland. Hopefully he sees this video. Maybe he can build it out. The Oilers, the way that you see it fit this season. But we'll start with the restricted free agents. There's a couple guys we're going to look at here, more pertaining to the Oilers' main club, and not necessarily looking at guys who are going to be in the AHL or the
Yeah.
farm systems or anything like that. But kind of looking here, you got Evan Bouchard, Klim Kostin, Ryan McLeod. How do you go about prioritizing those guys coming this offseason? Do you maybe look to trade them? Do you try to sign them long term? Are there bridge deals coming here? And which one do you start with?
Yeah, throw my Ken Holland hat on here. But I guess if I wanted to get in character, I'd put on a suit that's too big and have a glass of red wine next to me. But we won't go that far. The most important RFA for them to get done is Evan Bouchard. And it's like not even really that close. But the thing is, he's the most complicated of the moves. I think the easiest contract to negotiate is the one for Klim Kostin. So I'm actually going to start there. This is a guy who likes being in Edmonton. I reported a couple days ago he had an offer since the end of the NHL season to go back to Russia, and I don't believe it's something he's that interested in. I think he wants to stay in the NHL, and I think he wants to stay in Edmonton. So I'm going with a 2-year deal for Klim Kostin at 1.5 million. You know, you're paying 100K per goal last year, which I think is a decent rate for an RFA contract. He's got 20 goal potential. He brings some jam into their lineup, but he doesn't have a lot of negotiating power here. So 2 years, 1.5 for Klim Kostin seems like an easy way to start. Ryan McLeod, it's a little bit more complicated just because he plays a more important role, third line center. He put up decent offensive numbers last year, but I should say, and he's doesn't get any time with McDavid and Draisaitl. Like he really does this
Right.
all kind of on his own. He also did the Oilers a really big solid last year, knocking down his AAV a little bit so that they could stay cap compliant. So there's this notion in Edmonton that Ryan McLeod like owes him one, or sorry, the Oilers owe him one. So I think he's gonna get a tick up. See the production there, 28 goals in 69 games last season. You know, that's like a 30, 40 goal point pace. I think he's going to get a 2-year deal as well. I have this one coming in a bit more than costing at $2 million. So again, nothing huge here. They're not going long term with either of those guys because they can't
Right.
afford to go long term with anyone, which brings me to Bouchard as the third RFA as a part of this exercise. They would probably love to go like 7x7 with Evan Bouchard or 5x5 with Evan Bouchard. They can't afford it. And there's also talk that Evan Bouchard himself is sitting there going, hold up. I'm going to be quarterbacking the best power play in the NHL. Statistically, it was the best power play of all time last year. I'm going to get top 4 minutes next to Matthias Ekholm, who did wonders for my game. Why would Evan Bouchard sign long term? Sign a 1 or
Yeah.
2-year deal. Let the cap go up, and you'll be making 10 mil a year in 3-4 years. So I think they're kind of stuck with a 1-year deal for Bouchard, as crazy as that is.
So you're just gonna have to bridge him here, get it over, remain RFA at the
Yeah.
end. I believe he would still be at the end of that, correct? So
Mm.
bridge him through there. What's the value of that contract for this next year?
There's reports that he's looking for 3 to 3.5. The interesting thing with Bouchard is he has no arbitration rights, right? Like Costin and
Right.
McLeod both have arb rights. Bouchard's only potential leverage play would be to sign an offer sheet. Those don't happen. No one signs offer sheets unless you're Carolina and Montreal doing your weird feud from a couple of years ago. So I do think it'll come in relatively low. I went 1 year, $3 million on the nose for Bouchard's bridge deal.
Okay, so there you go. There's RFAs kind of essentially handled. Is there anyone else on this list that you see being an RFA right now that you think might come back or makes any type of jump into the big club next year?
Yes, I do actually. Raphael Lavoie, I think you're looking at 1 year, 850K for Raphael Lavoie. He's a guy who could factor in to the big club next year. Took a big step forward in Bakersfield, had an injury early in the year, got healthy, and boom, he was one of the Condors' best players. So Raphael Lavoie for kind of like 1 year, sub 900K. That's an easy one to sign. And from his perspective, he's in a weird case where he should almost want the lowest AAV possible, because then that just means that there's a better chance you're sticking in the NHL if you don't price yourself out of things, right?
Right. Well, so there you go. There's the RFA signed. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but now we are over the salary cap.
Oh, yeah.
Currently looking at $2.28 million over the cap. What is your next move in terms of being able to sort this out? We got to trade guys, buy guys out. How do you kind of get yourself to be cap compliant at least here, moving forward at going towards the free agent frenzy?
The candidates are pretty clear cut. It's Cody Ceci, Kyler Yamamoto, and Warren Fogle. So this is, I mean, I watched the one with Montreal that you guys did, and it was like acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois, boom, big splashes. And this is going to be way more boring than that. The Oilers offseason is not going to be electric. So I have two trades. Neither of them really move the needle. The first one is Kyler Yamamoto to Chicago for a 5th-round pick.
Okay.
There was talk that the Oilers might need to go the buyout route. I've heard some reports though that Ken Holland is pretty confident he can find a taker for Yamamoto, and he won't even have to add a sweetener. So I have Yamamoto going to a Chicago, a 5th-round pick coming back to the Oilers. Obviously Edmonton, they got to get rid of money. We just talked about that, over the cap right now, and we haven't even made any UFA ads. So you
Yeah.
get rid of Yamamoto, you get a 5th-rounder back. If you're Chicago, you need NHLers. They have like close to none. Kyler Yamamoto's played with McDavid and Draisaitl before. He's shown he can at least keep up with the pace, and he's smart enough to play that style of game. So why can't he do it with Connor Bedard? I think Chicago should look at a guy like Yamamoto and go, yeah, he makes sense for us.
All right, so there you go. Frees up enough space there just to at least get us back under the cap. But I'm certain you're not done at this point. You're now into 820K. Okay, a little bit of breathing room, but you still want to sign some UFAs here. Mention some other guys that you'd be looking at to move out to save some money. Who's the next guy who goes out, and what's the return coming back?
We can look at the log jam there. We just had it pulled up on the left side of their forward group. Evander Kane's not going anywhere. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has a full no-trade clause and committed to this city on an 8-year deal. Could be the first Oiler to go wire to wire. The trade rumors surrounding Nuge a couple weeks ago, they were stupid. Dylan Holloway, young guy, Klim Kostin, we just signed. So the odd man out is unfortunately Warren Fogle. He really came on towards the back half of the season. He had a very strong playoffs, actually. It was one of their most consistent players from like an effort level. I think that will lead to him having a bit of an uptick in trade value. Not a lot. And similar to Yamamoto, I'm shipping him out for a 5th-round pick. And I'm sending him to everyone's favorite cap dumping ground, the Arizona Coyotes. I guess the difference here is that I actually think Warren Fogle has like 15 to 20 goal potential. This isn't a dead money deal. And we've heard that Arizona doesn't want to take on any more dead money deals. They actually want to take a step towards competing next year. So go take a stab at Warren Fogle. Arizona has a zillion picks. Give up a 5th-rounder. Bring in a guy with 20 goal potential if you give him enough minutes. And if it's not working, or even if it does work, you can flip him at the deadline if you're out of the playoff race. So I have Fogle going to Arizona, clearing up the cap space. Edmonton brings in another 5th-round pick.
Okay, so you're adding another 5th-round pick here. Arizona does have two. I'm just gonna get you to go a little picky here. You got the Coyotes 5th-round pick, the Vegas Golden Knights 5th-round pick. You got a preference?
We're actually going to go the 5th-rounder in 2024 because Ken Holland will want to add another bullet to his chamber for maybe like a super low-level deadline move next year.
Okay, fair enough. So submitting this trade through, you open up another $2.75 million of cap space, now up to 3.57. What's the next play?
The next play is one that, I mean, we've known for over a year that the Oilers have interest in Connor Brown. Connor Brown was on Luke Gazdick's podcast the other day and said he had interest in being an Oiler. Him and McDavid played together in junior. The fit is perfect. And the interesting part about Connor Brown is because he spent, I think the threshold's 100 games. He spent 100 games on LTIR last year, or 100 days on LTIR. So he's actually eligible to sign a bonus-laden contract. You could bring him in for $1.5 million, which is what I'm going to do. And you could just throw in there that, hey, If you get 20 goals, you're getting 1.5 mil. If you play 60 games, you're getting another 500K. And that cap space is just all going to get pushed to 2024, 25. So the only thing that matters for this exercise is that I'm getting Connor Brown for 1 year at $1.5 million. And again, you might be sitting there going, why would Connor Brown sign for $1.5 million? You set the bonuses low, so he's still going to get his money. He's going to get a chance to come back to a Canadian market, up his value, and next summer when the cap's $90 million and Connor Brown's coming off a 25-goal season on McDavid's wing, the guy's going to get paid. It's a bit of a bet on himself, and for the Oilers, it's bringing in a sure thing. Their depth chart is so thin on the right side, and you're okay with a cap penalty for next year because everything for this Oilers team is about this year. So I got Connor Brown at 1.5 mil as my first UFA signing.
Right. So even though it's 1.5, it's not really 1.5 with the bonuses that are thrown in there to kind of help that sort everything out for him, bring that up. And I think one thing a lot of people kind of overlook in some of these situations, which I think is a pretty important thing, you've seen a lot of players do it around the league, is you go to a team that's going to be competitive. You're going to be playing with high-end players. You go on a short-term deal. Even if you take a tiny bit less money, you offer yourself that opportunity to prove yourself, move on into the next season where you do become UFA yet again, and then you can increase your value, whether that's on term or if it's on your AAV that you're looking at. So good opportunity for Connor Brown here to go into Edmonton. That's your first UFA signing. $2 million left in cap space. I can't imagine you're done if you're Ken Holland sitting there in the GM's office.
No, I don't think he would be done at this point. I got a few other names I have written down here. The first is a guy who was on the team last year. It's Mattias Janmark. There was rumblings that Connor McDavid mentioned Janmark by name to management as a guy who he thinks helps them win. He kills penalties, chips in with a bit of offense. He should be cheap. I've heard he's open to coming back to Edmonton and he enjoyed his time in the city. So 1 year, $1.1 million for Mattias Janmark is my second UFA signing. A guy who's going to, again, slot into the right side where they are painfully thin in that position. So he helps out there, kills penalties, plays tough minutes. Mattias Janmark, good signing. I actually have two more signings as well that I want to try jam in. The first one is Nick Bonino, who I think is going to come in under $1 million. I have him at $950K. It is going to be tight for the Oilers to keep sliding in UFAs at this point. But there is some roster finagling we can do after. And with Bonino, the reason I think he might be willing to sign here for a little bit cheaper, you look at his hockey DB, you look at his NHL.com, and he's an American. A lot of times, an American-born free agent who's won Stanley Cups, doesn't have a ton to prove. They're not going to come up to Edmonton. But the story with Bonino is that he actually married a girl from Edmonton somehow. He spends his summers in the suburb of Edmonton that I live in right now, does his off-season skating here and all of that. It's actually not insane to think that he's going to do his wife maybe a solid, stay in Edmonton for the year, play with a cup contender. So I have Bonino at $950K. And the last signing, I will admit this is an absolute coin flip, but Jonathan Toews for $1 million. Toews at $1 million. I don't know if he's playing this year. You ask people around the league and no one can give you an answer on Toews. But if he does, doesn't it make sense for him to chase another ring in a Western Canadian market, play with Connor McDavid? There would be some pull there. So I have Toews coming in for $1 million as well.
I like it. I like the signing. The whole point of this is you're basically shooting for it. You're trying to figure out ways to drastically improve the team. So there you slot in Jonathan Toews. I like it. But as you did mention, there's going to be some finagling having to go on here. We're now back over the salary cap. We're over the limit. What moves do we got to make, or are you looking to make to get us back to be cap compliant, at least to start the season?
Yeah, so we have to remove $980,000. And the Oilers did this kind of last year where they had to shorten up the roster and they didn't play with the usual 23-man crew on a day-to-day basis. So what they're going to do is, open competition in training camp, all of that good stuff. I actually have Raphael Lavoie, even though he signed starting the year in the minors. I think, maybe he happens to win a job in that forward group, but I see him more as like a first call up in case of injury kind of piece. And then if we go down to the blue line as well, there's no way the Oilers are going to carry 8 defensemen heading into next season. I was nervous. I thought I wasn't going to see Marcus Niemelainen in there. He's going on waivers as well, going down to Bakersfield. So you're moving like last year, the Oilers spent a big chunk of the season with only 12 forwards and 7 defensemen on their roster. They're actually going to be one better than that this year. They'll have 13 forwards and 7 defensemen, so they won't be totally screwed when someone wakes up with the flu. They won't be playing with less guys sometimes like they did last year. So they're also 633K below, which again, maybe some of these free agents, Brown, Bonino, maybe a TOEWS, maybe they end up costing you 100 or 200,000 more. There's some wiggle room here, is my point, for Ken Holland to still come in under the NHL salary cap with a pretty nice collection of forwards here. The right side is thin. Klim Kostin can play the right side, though. I even think you could move. Oh, Derek Ryan can play the right side. He spent most of last season as a right winger. So you have a pretty nice collection of vets. You've done some tinkering to make the bottom 6 better, in my opinion, which was a big reason why the Oilers lost out. And hey, you're under the cap.
Yeah, there you go. The roster filled out completely in here now. Now, final thing I'll get you to do, at least for the roster construction part of this, it doesn't have to be exactly what it will be come opening day, obviously. But if you're looking at this, what is your ideal way to build out this roster in terms of the lines that you're looking at going into the season?
Yeah, so on the top, obviously Connor McDavid centering it, and I like having a good mix with McDavid. He needs guys who can crash and bang and play down low. He also needs players who are smart, who can get him the puck. So I go McDavid with Nugent Hopkins and Zach Hyman as the Oilers' top line. It's a trio that spent a good chunk of time together last year. That gives me a second line of Leon Draisaitl with Evander Kane and Connor Brown on his right side. You might be sitting there going, wait, you're bringing him in to play with McDavid. I actually think Connor Brown could be like a better version of Yamamoto, and Draisaitl loved playing with Kyler Yamamoto. So I think that could work well. A little wrecking ball on the right side that's going to forecheck hard, has some goal scoring potential. My third line center will be Ryan McLeod, and I actually like the idea of just throwing him like it's set up here in between Klim Kostin and Matthias Janmark. Actually a decent chance for that third line to bring you some offense. I think, again, Klim Kostin can get you 16, 17 goals over the course of an 82-game season. Ryan McLeod, we're patiently waiting for his breakout. And on the fourth line, we're going to move Derek Ryan to the right wing, and we're going to move Jonathan Toews to the fourth line center spot. Him and Nick Bonino. Again, with Toews specifically, there's a lot of talk that even if he does play this year, it's going to be like a load management kind of thing. He's in and out of the lineup through the regular season. So having Toews, Bonino, and Derek Ryan just kind of rotating in on that fourth line as you need them, that works good enough. Get some youth on the left side with Dylan Holloway, some speed, maybe give you some scoring punch on the fourth line. That's how I see the forward group lining up.
And would you make any changes defensively here to the lineup that you have in terms of who plays with who plays in what roles? Like, how would you kind of shake this out based on what we're looking at roster wise right now?
Yeah, I have Bouchard up on the second pair with Ekholm. They were dynamite. Like, in all honesty, they're probably the Oilers' top pair heading into next year because Nurse and Ceci really struggled in the back half of the season. But I don't view this as it's constructed as a Stanley Cup caliber blue line. I think it's good enough to get you on a deep playoff run. We saw it this year, came within a couple of games of the Western Conference Final. Last year, a very similar blue line with Keith swapped out for Ekholm got you all the way to the conference finals. This can get you to the playoffs. This can win you a playoff round, but this is the number one point Ken Holland's going to have to improve next year at the deadline. Desharnais, Broberg, third pairing, sure, that can be fine. I think the upgrade needs to come on the top pair where Cody Ceci is. I don't think they can get it done this summer, but you never know who could be available leading into the deadline. If you would have told Oilers fans 12 months ago that they would get Matthias Ekholm when his extension with Nashville hadn't even kicked in yet, it's insane.
Yeah.
No one would have believed you. So you never know who's going to be available.
Yep. Very, very true. All right. So lineup is built there. We come in with 630K of space left. You got 22 players on the current roster, but this isn't a roster move or anything. I do have to ask you this before we go on. It is about the roster. You are very early on into a contract here with Jack Campbell. Things didn't necessarily play out the way you'd like them to in the year one there. You rely on Stuart Skinner. Ultimately, come playoff time, I think one thing a lot of people can probably agree on in that is that he wasn't necessarily able to go head to head or toe to toe with Adin Hill in that series against Vegas. Each of the last few playoff series that we've seen in the Stanley Cup Finals, that is, you've had a good goalie who's playing very well at the time, and you've kind of had an elite goalie on the other end, in Vasilevsky now kind of going to Bobrovsky in the way he was playing, at least leading into this one. Mm-hmm. Where do you kind of stand confidence-wise in the Oilers goalie situation going into next season, whether that be throughout the regular season, if that is getting into the playoffs, with these two guys as it is right now, Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner? What's your confidence level there?
I don't see a lot of reason to be down on Stuart Skinner, even though his playoffs weren't great. They asked him to start 12 straight games. I don't think he's ever done. I don't think he's done that since his WHL days. Like, they should have gone to Campbell at some point in the playoffs, especially because he was playing good. That was a big mistake, but it doesn't change my view of Skinner being this franchise's number one goalie for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think that's going to happen. Does it suck to pay your backup $5 million? Yeah, it does. But Stuart Skinner's dirt cheap, 2.6. Most teams will be okay with their goalie combo costing them 7.6 million. That's not an insane amount to spend between the pipes. I mean, Florida spending 10 on Bobrovsky alone, right?
Yeah.
So am I concerned about the goaltending? I don't think so. And this might sound dumb, but like, Jack Campbell can't be that bad again, can he? It's maybe too simple of a way to look at it, but like, he was terrible. Basically, wire to wire last year, he was not good. If all he needs to do is give you 36 to 38 games next year, I think he can be better than an 888 goalie. And at the end of the day, they came within a point or two of winning the conference with Jack Campbell being an 888 goalie and Skinner being their starter. I think it can be repeatable next year.
All right. Well, there's our roster, how we're looking at that. Now, obviously, expectations for next season, Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup or bust for the Oilers. Like, where do you kind of go into this one? If you kind of walk away without the cup next year, is it just a complete failure? How do you look at this next season? What is the aspirations?
You have 2 years left of Leon Draisaitl's bargain contract. It is Stanley Cup or bust. Every first round pick is on the table. Every prospect is on the table. And I kind of laid you out like what I think will happen. I don't think Ken Holland will take a big swing this summer. I think he wants to save a bullet for the trade deadline and see who's out there. But I feel like I was boring here. And I do think the Oilers need to push for a Stanley Cup. So I'll give you two, like, my watch list of potential big trades. The first one is Travis Konechny in Philly, 30-goal. Brad Marchand light is how he was described to me the other day. If the Oilers could get him for like a first rounder and a former first rounder and Xavier Bourgault, I think they would be interested in Konechny. The other name we talked about upgrading the top pair, it's Brett Pesce in Carolina. Coming into a contract year, the deal I kind of cooked up just from a value perspective was Philip Broberg and a second-round pick for Brett Pesce. You're giving up a lot, but if you can get Pesce, get him signed, and move out CC for like a third or a fourth rounder, whatever it would be, then maybe you can squeeze in a Brett Pesce kind of addition to this team as well. So those are the two big swings I could maybe see Ken Holland taking a peek at. But again, the most likely outcome is that they go into the season with this roster, or a roster similar to what I have, and the old Uncle Ken takes a big swing at the deadline, because you're right, it's Stanley Cup or bust in Edmonton.
All right, there you have it. I appreciate you taking the time here, Tyler, to do this. There's your Oilers off-season plan for 2023. I don't think this one was boring. I think this one was more strategic. You're plotting your way through the summer, getting yourself at least to the trade deadline here, where you know you're going to have an opportunity to maybe take another swing, like how you guys went out and grabbed Matthias Ekholm last year at the deadline. As you mentioned, nobody really saw that one coming, but it was available and the Oilers got it done. So interested to see how this offseason plays out. Interested to see what they do throughout the course of the season, especially leading up to the deadline there. But Tyler, thanks so much for doing this. I know we talked about you're getting ready for the draft in Nashville, much like we talked to Dennis Bernstein the other day. I am sure it's going to be very difficult for you to enjoy yourself out there in Nashville. So you have a good time, stay safe, and hopefully we get to catch up with you soon as all these predictions that you've made for the offseason start to pan out.
Yeah, we'll keep tabs on them. I'm hoping there's a spot in Nashville I can grab a cold beer. I'm hoping there's at least one.
Yes.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Enjoy your time in Nashville and enjoy next season.
Thanks, guys.